So you want to build muscle and you have no idea how much to eat. I'm going to tell you exactly how much to eat, beginning to end, and how to keep calculating it as you go. So we're going to start you out in a deficit. And I know this sounds wild, you want to grow, but we start everyone in their growth phase in a deficit. The reason for that is starting in deficit gives us a really accurate depiction of how much we need to feed you to put you in a subtle surplus. And starting in a small deficit, if you're training hard and food is done right, you will not lose any muscle. You're just going to lose a little bit of fat, which is just going to make you more insulin sensitive. It's going to help the growth process. So to find that original deficit, we don't want it to be too deep. We don't want anything crazy. So we're going to go into what we call the Goldilocks zone. It's the zone that we use for picking how much to feed someone for a subtle deficit. The Goldilocks zone is a zone where you're not eating so little that you lose performance or you see systems in your body shutting down, but it's also not high enough to be in a surplus. It's really simple. So for men, that's going to be somewhere between 2,000 and 2,200, and for women, that's going to be somewhere between 1,800 and 2,000. And like I said, once we start there, we are not going to stay here. So what you're going to do is you're going to weigh yourself on day one. You're going to go about eating 2,200 calories per se for that whole week, and you're going to see what happens on the scale. And it is possible that you gain weight because you really don't need as many calories as you think to grow. But let's say you drop weight. Perfect, that was our intention. You're gonna go about adding more calories that week. But the key here is to only add 100 calories at a time. And I know you wanna go fast and I know you wanna grow today, but you're already gonna be growing. It's just not gonna be showing up on the scale. And this is gonna be the process that's gonna build you the most muscle in the leanest way where you're really gonna like the end outcome. So you add that 100 calories and you weigh in again the next week. And maybe this time you don't gain weight, but you don't lose any. So you're gonna add another 100 calories. And maybe once again, you don't gain any weight. So you add another 100 calories and then you start growing. Perfect. At this point, you're eating 2,500 calories and you're growing. And this is the key. Being in a subtle surplus is the best way to grow muscle. The studies are very clear. They've done studies showing people eating a 200 calorie surplus and people eating an 800 calorie surplus, and they both gained identical amounts of muscle mass if the nutrients were chosen correctly. So eat enough protein, put yourself in a subtle surplus, you'll grow just as fast as a massive overeating bodybuilder. And the key here is that eating in a subtle surplus will add a lot less fat. So you've picked yourself in this Goldilocks zone. We've built up for a few weeks and now you're in a surplus. The key here is to continue to do a fasted weigh-in every single week to make sure your weight is still tracking up. Whenever your weight stops moving, you can take your weight up, your calories up by 100 calories. And continuing this process over time, your metabolism will get far superior. These numbers will continue to climb bit by bit, but you're only allowed to increase calories when the weight stops moving. This is the key to this scenario. And why this is so important is because they've done studies on this. And in a 3-month study where they had one group in a 200 calorie surplus and the other group in an 800 calorie surplus, the group in the 200 calorie surplus gained 4 pounds of tissue. Perfect, 4 pounds of tissue is great. And the group in the 800 calorie surplus ended up gaining how much? They gained 4 pounds of tissue. They gained an identical amount of tissue, which is awesome. In either case, they both gained quite a bit of muscle. So that's awesome. But the problem here is that the group that was in a 200 calorie surplus throughout their journey only put on 1.5 pounds of fat, which is even better. They probably looked a little bit leaner and they put on the same amount of strength and tissue. But the group that ate in an 800 calorie surplus for those 3 months ended up putting on 8.5 pounds, which is not good. So the problem here is, one, who wants to put on 8.5 pounds of fat when you could easily go about gaining 1.5 pounds of fat, especially if you're going to gain equal amounts of muscle. And the problem here is that at the end of the day, this guy's actually going to end up with more muscle, because in order for this person to lose the fat they gained during that off season, they're going to end up losing a little bit of that muscle that they gained in the process. While this guy's only going to have 1.5 pounds of fat to lose, and he'll be able to maintain that entire 4 pounds. Now strain this out for an entire year, and this guy's going to gain 16 pounds in only 6 pounds of fat. That's amazing. And this guy's gonna gain 16 pounds of muscle, but he's gonna gain somewhere around 36 pounds of fat. This is why you see a lot of young guys in the gym saying they put on 40 pounds in a year. It is not something that you can do. Your body cannot put on 40 pounds of tissue in a year. It just doesn't exist. Somewhere between 15 and 20 pounds being the maximum insane higher end of the spectrum. So put yourself into a small deficit, work up 100 calories a week at a time, keep yourself just gaining a little bit of tissue at a time, and it might feel slow, but I promise you, you're gonna be gaining muscle just as fast as the guy who's eating way more than you. The only difference is that as he gets fat and looks like crap, you're gonna look even better every single day. And that's exactly how you build the muscle.